Welcome to the Justice Journal podcast. I'm Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert. I hope you enjoy this podcast series where we discuss important public safety issues and provide insight into who we are as an office and what we do both in the courtroom and in the community to provide the highest level of public safety through prosecution, prevention, and innovation.
Welcome to the Justice Journal podcast. I'm Shelley Oreo. Today, I'm joined by Chip Pollock, who is the director of the Sacramento County District Attorney's Laboratory of Forensic Service, or as most people refer to it, the Crime Lab. Chip will talk about his role as a Crime Lab director and about the lab itself, including staff, the work conducted, and equipment, among other areas. Welcome, Chip.
Thank you.
Can you start by telling us how you started down the road into the science field? Did you always have an interest in science as a child?
I've always had an interest in science. I originally went in after high school, went into college, and I was an engineering major, civil engineering, actually. And then I kind of thought a little bit about different parts of science, and I got really interested in the area of biochemistry, and that's what my degree is in. So I graduated from UC Davis with a degree in biochemistry, and I think that's been my best path so far.
What about your interest in criminal forensic science in particular? Was there an aha moment when you heard about that type of science?
Well, I kind of stumbled into my career, to be honest. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do when I was getting out of college, and I was at the UC Davis Career Center, and I saw a job position for a forensic toxicologist with Contra, Costa County Sheriff's Department, Crime Lab. And I thought, yeah, it'd be pretty interesting to try a little bit of different work every day. Mm-hmm. I applied for the position, and I got the position, and I think that was kind of the one moment where I said, this is the career I think I want to pursue.
So you knew right away that you loved that, and you wanted to stay.
Yeah, I enjoy the variety of the cases that you get to do. I'm a person that doesn't really like to be doing the same thing every day, so I like the variety, and that's what forensics allows you to have.
Okay, so that's where you started. So you talked a little bit about your college background. Is there anything else that you needed to do before you started into that job, or just the college degree at that time?
Typically in current forensic science positions, you need to have a degree in the hard sciences. So It's either most of the people that are in our field have degrees in chemistry or biochemistry or molecular biology. So I had the background with my biochemistry degree to go right into the forensics field. Mm-hmm. So I felt lucky that I was able to do that. I didn't have to do any follow-up coursework to be able to start a career in forensic science.
So you started in Contra Costa with the Sheriff's Department.
Yes.
And where did your career go from there?
Well, I started in 1990 at the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office. I was a forensic toxicologist there. So I did a little bit of work in controlled substances and forensic alcohol. And then at the end of my career at Contra Costa, I started doing forensic toxicology. I was married, just had our first son, so I was commuting back and forth from Sacramento to Contra Costa every day for 5.5 years.
Oh, so you were living in Sacramento at that time?
I was, yeah. So what I did is I applied for a position, and I was hired as a criminalist with the California Department of Justice Crime Lab system here in Sacramento. And from 1995 to 2001, I was a criminalist and ended up becoming a senior criminalist at the Sacramento Regional Laboratory. And there I did many of the types of work I did in my previous career at Contra Costa, but I also started to do casework in crime scene processing and reconstruction, clandestine drug laboratory analysis and processing. And then my career shifted into the area of trace evidence, is kind of where my specialty is now. And then in 2001, I was offered a position with the Sacramento County Crime Lab and as a criminalist, and I've been there ever since.
So you started in the trace evidence area also?
Yes, I was trained. I'm trained in the area of trace evidence. The interesting thing was one of my colleagues, and she's nationally known, recognized criminalist, Faye Springer, used to work at Department of Justice Crime Lab in Sacramento when I was first hired. And about 2 or 3 months after I was hired, she left and came to Sacramento County Crime Lab. So I've kind of followed her everywhere she's gone
that's
so
funny.
far.
Can you give us a overview of the crime lab, starting with a few of the unique aspects?
Well, the Sacramento County Crime Lab is only one of 4 crime labs in the state that it's under the direction of the DA's office. So that's a unique feature. We're a nationally accredited laboratory, which most laboratories in the nation are. But we have some unique features that our laboratory has that many other labs in the state and even nationally doesn't have. We have a lot of equipment and a lot of specialty in the areas of advanced trace evidence work. Okay. So in the times that laboratories are starting to decrease their trace evidence capabilities, we've always been very fortunate with the support of our district attorney that they support the mission of maintaining a top accredited trace evidence laboratory. And I think because of that, many of the cases we've done down the road in the future and the ones we've done in the past have benefited to having that ability to do the trace evidence work that many labs can't do.
So you mentioned toxicology, and we've talked about trace evidence. For the normal everyday person out there who might not know what that means, can you describe what the main areas of analysis the crime lab does and detail that out a little bit in terms of what kind of testing is conducted?
Sure.
And an example, if you can.
We have our laboratory is accredited in the areas of comparative evidence, which would be commonly known as firearms and tool marks. Those are types of cases that you might have a firearms examiner who's comparing a fired bullet from a homicide scene and comparing it back to a seized weapon. We also do footwear and tire tracks. So if there's some tire tracks or footwear at a crime scene, the agencies or the crime scene people will collect a reference or collect a sample of that tire track or shoe print. And then we can go back and compare it and try to see if we can identify that shoe print to a specific shoe we may have in that particular case. Mm-hmm. So that's our comparative evidence section. We also have a chemistry section, which is basically controlled substances. That would be solid dosage drug samples that are submitted. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement might have a sample they'll submit to us, and then we will actually confirm what is in that material, whether it's a controlled substance or not. Our toxicology unit is pretty much broken up into 2 sections. One section is called forensic alcohol, and that's where primarily we do the blood alcohol testing for drunk driving cases. Mm-hmm. We also maintain all the breath instruments throughout the county of Sacramento as well.
And those are used at the field sobriety checkpoints?
The evidentiary breath tests will be used at the checkpoints, and also they have breath instruments that are located at different law enforcement agencies throughout the county.
Okay.
And as well as the jail. In addition to the alcohol unit, we have our forensic toxicology unit, and that's the section that does mostly drug and poison testing in biological samples. So we also do some coroner's toxicology work as well. In that area. So that unit would be receiving blood, urine, maybe even tissue samples, and they're testing those samples for the presence of controlled substances.
Okay.
We also have a crime scene team. We do respond to crime scenes if any of our agencies need us to do that. They're on call 24 hours a day, so we'll always have somebody available to go out there. We can pretty much provide any type of service that the agency would want. We can process the entire scene if that's what they need us to do. That would include things like photography and diagramming and collection of evidence. Or we can just be there more in an advisory role where we're just there to bounce ideas off of and be able to aid them in their collection of evidence.
So would it be up to the law enforcement agency to decide whether to call criminalists out to the scene, or do we generally respond to like murder scenes?
Most of our larger agencies have their own crime scene investigation teams, so they will call us out. They have a on-call list, so they know we're always available if they ever need us. Okay. Many times we may get called out to crime scenes that are a little bit more need a little bit more specific analysis. That would be an example of a case would be a blood spatter interpretation case or a bullet path trajectory type of case where we have kind of the specialized training in. We may be better suited to go to those types of crime scenes. But typically we're available for anything that the agency would want. We also have our DNA unit, our biology unit. That currently is probably our largest staffing level in our laboratory. We do all the biological testing for sexual assault cases, homicide cases. We work on Prop 69 property crimes that we work with. We looked at old and cold cases, and so we're basically doing what they call PCR technology, and that's kind of the way we analyze the either tissue samples. It could be any evidence for biological analysis. And then finally, we have our trace evidence, which I've kind of discussed briefly. Our trace evidence unit will examine cases such as gunshot residue, glass cases, paint cases, fiber. And basically what we're trying to do in those types of cases is we're trying to compare a question sample, for example, a fiber that may have been collected from a victim of a homicide, and we may be comparing it back to a carpet sample that was removed from the suspect's home. And we're doing analysis to see if those two can be associated with each other.
You mentioned the biology DNA. Is that where rape kits would be analyzed? Rape kits has been in the news quite a lot lately. Is that where that would be analyzed?
Yes, those all go into our DNA unit. Currently, we have a strategy where we have developed our biology supervisor and staff came together and developed a what we call a DNA rape kit team. It's a group of criminalists that are focused on doing rape kits, and they've come up with a strategy for doing the analysis that it's more efficient, and that's what we're trying to do to increase our productivity in the areas of rape kit analysis.
Okay. And in the news, there's a lot talked about with the backlog of analyzing the rape kits, and our crime lab, correct me if I'm wrong, in 2013 started testing every kit. Is that correct? Yes,
back in 2013, we went and began testing every single rape kit that was being submitted. Since 2013 to the present, we've been working on all of the backlog cases. So one of our goals for this year was to complete any backlog DNA cases for the year of 2008. Okay. So we're doing it. We should be able to meet that goal. Okay. We've also seen in this last year an increase of rape kit submissions compared to at the same time this year. We have the same number of rape kits that we've received this year as we had last year in the entire 2017. So there is an increase that we're seeing.
And one differentiation also with our lab is that we receive, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, we receive the rape kits directly from the hospital versus from law enforcement, where other counties, that's how that's done.
Yes, the rape, I guess, I don't know if you call them the sexual assault, where they have the clinics where they do the actual examinations. They will submit the rape kits directly to our laboratory, so it doesn't go through law enforcement. It comes directly to us.
Okay. You mentioned that our crime scene investigators are available on call to go out to a crime scene. What other ways are requests submitted to the lab for analyzing evidence? Do they come through our prosecutors?
They can come in various ways. Many of our district attorneys, deputy district attorneys, will submit requests directly to our laboratory for certain types of analysis. Our criminalists and our unit supervisors will contact the deputy district attorney and discuss kind of a little bit of case background and find out exactly what type of requests they're asking. We also get the law enforcement agencies themselves will submit evidence and submit requests to get analysis done.
And that would be prior to a case being filed? That would be more.
It could be, yeah. That could be if they're in an investigative stage. Okay. They might be submitting evidence. Our coroner's office will submit cases directly to our laboratory because we share the same building. So they will submit their samples directly to us that way. And then in certain cases, they're not really submitting them, but we will actually go out for like DUI cases. We will actually go out to the jails and collect the blood alcohol kits from the jail and return them to our laboratory to get them assigned out for analysis. How many criminalists do we have at the crime lab at this point? Right now we have 41 technical staff, 41 criminalists. That would include management as well as technical criminalist staff. And we also have a retired annuitant, two retired annuitants, and two administration services personnel that help us at the laboratory.
Approximately how many pieces of evidence does the crime lab process per year?
Wow, I would say we're probably in the thousands, the tens of thousands of items of evidence. It all kind of depends because we track every specific what we call submission. So that would be a package of evidence, and many times that package of evidence may have many items within it. Okay. So it's not uncommon to get a complex case where you have several hundred items of evidence that you're going to be having to process and look through.
And is there a urgency for some of those pieces of evidence? I mean, how do you prioritize? Is it just whenever they are received by the lab?
I think what you're trying to do as an examiner, what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at what evidence may provide the most probative information that the investigator, or in this case, maybe the deputy district attorney, information that will help provide answers to that case. Mm-hmm. So you kind of want to look at evidence and decide what is going to maybe give you what's the most bang for your buck, for example, of a particular item of evidence. So that's kind of the strategy that I know as an examiner themselves, I take that approach to try to find out what is going to be the most probative, always trying to keep in mind what is the question you're trying to answer, and what items of evidence or what tests can you do that will answer that question. And that's kind of what our goal is.
What would you describe as the crime lab's role in the general process of investigations and prosecutions of a case? How would you characterize the crime lab's role?
I would say we're kind of we're the somewhat of the objective body of the case. We're science-based staff. We use the science in order to answer some questions. We're not really involved in the aspect of the investigation per se. I mean, we are, when we're out at crime scenes, we are doing some, I guess you could consider it, investigative work. And we're not actively involved in either the prosecution or the defense of that case. We're just try to be the more of the objective piece of the case that can provide the science and answers to the questions that are being asked using the science that is available to us. Is as I think our role is. We're more of a supplement to the legal system.
We're going to pause in the conversation and pick up in our next episode with Chip to discuss in more detail the criminalists and the equipment that we have at our crime lab. I'll give a few case examples and talk about what it takes to get into the field for people out there who are interested in forensic science, what they might want to do now and what they would need to do in the future. So please join us for our second episode.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find all of the Justice Journal podcasts on our website at sacda.org, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube.